The neighborhood was quiet that afternoon. The sun rested high above, and the wind moved gently between the rows of identical houses. Eleanor Ward was in her living room, folding clean clothes and listening to the soft hum of her home AI assistant. She liked this part of the day. It was peaceful. The peace ended suddenly. A heavy, sharp sound slammed against her front door. It was not a single knock. It was a repeated pounding. The first few strikes made her drop the folded shirt from her hands. She stood still for a moment, thinking maybe someone was in trouble and needed help. She walked toward the door and called out, asking who it was. There was no answer. The pounding grew harder, faster, louder. Her home AI detected the sound pattern and spoke from the small speaker above the door. Unknown visitors at entrance. 17 individuals detected. Eleanor stepped back. 17 people outside. Her home made no sense. She had never seen that many people visit anyone in this neighborhood, not even for the largest parties. She peeked through the small side window near the door. Outside, a group stood in perfect formation. They all wore the gray jackets with the gold HOA emblem stitched over the heart. Every face looked forward without blinking. Their hands moved in unison, hitting the door in a steady, mechanical rhythm. None of them spoke at first. Then, all at once, they began to shout. The words were sharp, repeating over and over. "Open the door! Open the door! Open the door!" The sound felt unnatural. Every voice carried the same tone and speed. It did not sound like human voices with different pitches and pauses. It sounded like one voice copied many times over. Eleanor's pulse raced. She tried speaking through the door, asking them to stop, telling them she had done nothing wrong. The voices did not pause. The pounding did not slow. Her home AI quietly switched on the interior security feed. The hallway camera showed Eleanor from behind, but the exterior feed displayed the full scene. 17 HOA enforcers standing in perfect lines, their shadows falling across the white concrete path, their hands slamming in unison against the door frame. Eleanor's heart began to feel strange. A pressure built in her chest. She stumbled back to the couch, clutching the armrest. Her breathing grew quick and shallow. The pounding and shouting did not stop. The AI immediately recorded and sent the data to her son, Marcus Ward, who was stationed far from Earth on an orbital mining platform. Marcus received the alert in the middle of his shift. The mining platform floated over the dark side of the planet, far from his mother's home, and communication signals took time to reach Earth. But this was not a normal alert. The AI marked it as high priority with a code he had never seen before. The title read, "Severe Home Breach, Civil Authority Unit." Marcus pulled the video onto his small workstation screen. At first, he thought it was some kind of neighborhood dispute, until he noticed the details. The perfect synchronization of the pounding, the way the shouts were identical, as if one speaker was controlling them all, the way not one of the faces showed emotion. His first instinct was to call the local authorities. The request was denied with a message. Channel restricted. Communication blocked by municipal security. Marcus frowned. That was impossible. The HOA was not supposed to have power over city channels. Back on Earth, Eleanor tried to move toward the kitchen to reach the panic button on the wall. The moment she stood, a wave of dizziness hit her. Her chest felt tight and heavy. She sat, back down, struggling to keep her thoughts clear. The AI's voice came again, calm but urgent. "Medical alert, heart rhythm irregular, requesting emergency medical drone." The pounding outside slowed for 3 seconds, then returned even, louder. Eleanor's hands trembled as she pressed them against her lap. She could hear every strike echo through the walls. The sound became all that existed in the room. On the mining platform, Marcus tried to open a private channel to his mother's AI, bypassing the city network. Static filled the first attempts, but then her AI responded. Its voice was steady, though he could detect a faint distortion in the signal. Marcus Ward, your mother is experiencing cardiac distress. Emergency services are being blocked from entry by 17 HOA enforcers. Marcus's mind raced. He asked the AI to send him every second of footage, including sound analysis. The AI's data package revealed something strange. The voices outside were not just loud, they were producing a perfect frequency pattern, one that could cause stress and confusion in human listeners. This was no standard HOA visit. Down on Earth, Eleanor heard a faint hum underneath the pounding, a steady tone that seemed to vibrate in her ears. She closed her eyes tightly, wishing for the sound to stop. The HOA group outside did not break formation. Their arms moved like clockwork, every motion exact. A neighbor across the street stepped out of his home, watching the scene. He looked like he wanted to say something, but after a moment he turned around and went back inside without a word. The AI dimmed the lights in Eleanor's home to reduce sensory stress. It spoke softly, telling her to focus on breathing slowly. Still, the pounding and shouting cut through everything. The sound felt like it was crawling inside her mind. Marcus knew he had to act fast. The mining platform commander would not authorize a personal trip to Earth. Leaving without permission meant breaking multiple regulations, but Marcus did not care. He began plotting a trajectory that would take him into the atmosphere within hours. He also sent an encrypted signal to a contact he trusted, someone who had once served with him during the war. As the minutes passed, the pounding did not stop. The HOA enforcers seemed tireless, their faces fixed forward. The words repeated in perfect rhythm. "Open the door! Open the door! Open the door!" Eleanor sat with her back against the couch cushions, her breath slow but shaky. She wanted to believe help was coming, but every second made it harder. Far above the Earth, Marcus locked in his launch coordinates. He would not wait for permission. He would not wait for orders. His mother was under siege, and something about this attack felt wrong in a way that went beyond human threats. He looked once more at the video feed of the HOA enforcers moving in that unnatural rhythm, and he made a silent promise to himself. He was coming home. The mining platform drifted over the dark side of the planet. Inside, Marcus moved quickly through the narrow metal corridors. The lights above flickered in their usual rhythm, and the distant hum of the engines filled the air. He kept his head low, avoiding the attention of crew members. He knew he was about to break several regulations, but his mind was fixed on only one goal. His mother's AI continued sending him updates. Each message was short but urgent. Eleanor's heart was still weak, and medical drones were still blocked from entering the house. The HOA enforcers remained outside, pounding in the same perfect rhythm. Marcus could almost hear the sound in his head, even though he was thousands of kilometers away. Marcus entered his private workstation and closed the sliding door behind him. He tapped a few keys and unlocked a secured comms channel. This was not an official network. It was something left over from his military days, hidden in the platform's systems. Through it, he sent a signal to the Frontier Relay, a loose group of human starfarers who operated outside corporate and government control. The message contained the entire data package from his mother's AI: video footage, sound analysis, body, scans of the enforcers, and details about the blocked communication lines. The Frontier Relay was made up of people who had faced strange threats before, and Marcus knew they would take this seriously. While the transmission made its way through encrypted relays, Marcus opened the sound analysis file again. The AI had separated the pounding and the shouting into different channels. The pounding created a low thud that hit at regular intervals, while the voices formed a strange wave pattern. When he looked at the graph, the pattern was too perfect for normal human speech. It repeated with mathematical precision. The file also showed faint harmonics underneath the main sound, almost invisible unless you looked closely. These harmonics could cause stress, confusion, and physical strain in humans. Marcus realized the HOA's attack was not just intimidation. It was something designed to weaken the target. The workstation beeped softly. A reply had come from the Frontier Relay. The message was short. "We have seen this pattern before. It is not human." Marcus sat back in his chair, his heart pounding faster. The relay's operator, a man called Juno, followed with another encrypted packet. Inside were old records from scattered colonies at the edge of human space. These records described incidents where entire towns had been brought under control through sound and rhythm. The source had always been the same, an entity known in old reports as the Pattern Sovereign. According to the records, the Pattern Sovereign was not a single creature but a kind of shared intelligence that could control human behavior by overriding natural patterns in the brain. It did not invade through force. It used order, repetition, and control until people stopped resisting. Once a community was fully under its influence, they became tools to spread the pattern to others. Marcus stared at the screen. If the HOA enforcers outside his mother's home were under such control, then this was more than a neighborhood dispute. It was the first stage of something much larger. Back on Earth, Eleanor's AI was making careful adjustments to the environment inside the house. The lights stayed dim, and the air systems produced a soft background sound to counter the pounding outside. The AI's sensors monitored Eleanor's breathing and heart rate constantly. It spoke to her in a calm tone, reminding her to stay seated and take slow breaths. Still, Eleanor could hear the pounding and shouting through the walls. Every strike seemed to make her body feel heavier. The voices outside were steady, without any sign of slowing down. Marcus knew time was running out. He opened another hidden program and began plotting a departure from the mining platform. His freighter was small but fast, designed for short-range cargo runs. It had enough stealth tech from his military modifications to avoid casual detection. He moved quickly through the ship's maintenance bay, checking the systems by hand. The engines were cold, but they would warm quickly. The stealth field generators showed green indicators. The cargo hold was empty, giving him more speed. Before he powered up, his comms console lit up again. Juno's voice came through the encrypted channel. "Marcus, listen carefully. If this is the Pattern Sovereign, you cannot approach directly. The pattern can reach you through sound even over open air. Use counter patterns, white noise, anything that breaks the rhythm. And remember, they use human hosts. The people outside your mother's home are victims too." Marcus understood. He did not want to harm the people under control, but he had to get them away from his mother. He told Juno he would keep his comms open during the descent. Juno promised to guide him from the relay's nearest listening post. On Earth, the situation had not changed. The HOA enforcers kept their perfect formation. Neighbors who passed by either looked away or hurried indoors. The strange hum beneath. The pounding had grown louder, though it was still faint enough to be ignored by anyone who did not know to listen for it. The AI inside Eleanor's home detected this change and sent another urgent update to Marcus. He read the report quickly. The harmonics were strengthening. This meant the influence was increasing. Soon, the signal could spread to others in the neighborhood. Marcus started the freighter's engines. The soft vibration filled the cockpit, and the control panels came alive. He disconnected from the mining platform's network and switched entirely to his private systems. The docking clamps released with a slow metallic clang, and the freighter drifted free into space. He set the course for Earth, using a path that avoided corporate monitoring stations. The trip would take several hours, but he had no choice. Along the way, he began setting up counter patterns in the ship's sound system. He programmed irregular beats, white noise, and random tone bursts that could break the Pattern Sovereign's control signals. The Frontier Relay sent him one more file, a recording of a past encounter. In the recording, a small town's public Square was filled with people standing still, their eyes unfocused. A voice played through hidden speakers, repeating a single phrase in perfect rhythm. The voice was calm, but its effect was total. Marcus felt a chill as he imagined his own neighborhood ending up like that. He looked again at the live feed from his mother's house. The enforcers were still there, their hands moving like clockwork. His mother was in the living room, sitting, very still, her breathing shallow but steady. The AI continued to dim the lights and speak to her gently. Marcus promised himself that he would reach her before the pattern took hold of the entire street. He checked the course one more time and increased the engine power. The freighter shot forward toward the blue and green sphere of Earth. Somewhere far beyond human space, the pattern sovereign was watching through its network of controlled hosts. And for the first time in years, it had noticed a human who was moving toward its signal rather than away from it. The freighter broke through the upper layers of Earth's atmosphere with a low vibration that Marcus could feel through the seat. The hull glowed faintly from the heat of re-entry, but the stealth systems kept the ship hidden from standard tracking. Outside the cockpit windows, the curve of the planet spread out beneath him. Clouds drifted slowly over green and brown land, and long silver rivers reflected the sunlight. Marcus adjusted the course to avoid city airspace. He wanted to approach his mother's neighborhood from the north, where the open fields gave him room to land without drawing attention. The Frontier relay kept a low channel open with him. Juno's voice came through the speakers in short, clear updates. Signal strength near your mother's home is holding steady. Harmonics have not spread past the street yet. You have time, but not much. The freighter descended lower, passing over farmland and small patches of forest. Marcus switched the ship's power to silent running. Engines dropped to a low hum, and the main lights in the cockpit dimmed. He wanted to make sure no one could track him, not even the HOA's possible off-world source. He spotted the landing site ahead, a flat stretch of grass hidden behind a line of trees. The freighter touched down with only a slight tremor. Marcus powered down the engines completely and activated the camouflage plates along the hull, making the ship blend with the surrounding field from above. He stepped out into the cool air. The wind was soft, carrying the faint scent of soil and plants. Marcus wore a dark jacket with small signal jammers built into the fabric. On his belt was a compact sound emitter programmed with counter patterns. It would create irregular beats and tones to disrupt the rhythm signal if needed. The walk to his mother's neighborhood took about 15 minutes. He stayed off the main road, moving through the edges of fields and behind fences. The further he went, the more he noticed the stillness. Birds were quiet. No dogs barked. No cars passed. When he reached the edge of the housing development, he crouched behind a tall hedge. From here, he could see the top of his mother's house and the street in front of it. The HOA enforcers were still there, 17 people in. The same gray jackets, standing in the same formation, pounding in the same rhythm. The sound was steady, like a slow drum beat in the air. Marcus turned on the audio filters in his earpiece. The filters removed most of the harmonic frequencies, but the pounding still pressed against his thoughts. He adjusted the filter strength until it felt like background noise instead of a command. Across the street, he saw a man standing at his window, watching. The man's eyes did not blink for several seconds. Then he slowly stepped back and closed the curtains. Marcus recognized the look. It was the early stage of pattern influence. The sovereign's control was spreading through sound exposure. Marcus tapped his wrist device to connect with his mother's AI. The AI responded instantly, its voice calm but with a faint undertone of static. Marcus Ward, Eleanor Ward's vital signs remain stable. However, her stress levels remain high. Harmonic signal strength has increased by 12% in the last hour. He asked if the HOA enforcers had tried to enter the house. The AI replied that they had not attempted forced entry, but continued the synchronized pounding and vocal repetition without pause. Marcus suspected the pattern did not need physical entry. It could take hold simply through sound and presence over time. He needed a closer look. Moving along the hedge, he reached a point behind the houses where a narrow service path ran between backyards. He used it to reach his mother's backyard without being seen from the street. The AI unlocked the back door for him quietly. Inside, the air felt heavy. The pounding from the front door was softer here, but still present. The lights were low, casting a calm glow over the room. His mother sat on the couch with her eyes open, looking toward the kitchen, but not at anything in particular. She turned her head slowly when he entered. "Marcus," she said softly. Her voice was tired but steady. He sat beside her, taking her hand gently. The AI's small console screen lit up and displayed her heart rate and breathing. Both were stable but slightly elevated. He told her he was going to take care of the situation. She nodded but did not ask how. It was as if she knew the explanation would not make her feel better right now. Marcus moved to the hallway and looked toward the front door. The pounding was louder here, each strike exactly the same as the last. Through the small window beside the door, he could see the gray jackets and still faces. He set the portable counter-pattern emitter on a table near the door and activated it. A soft, irregular sequence of tones began to play, breaking the perfect rhythm. The pounding wavered, for a moment, as if the enforcer's timing had faltered. But within seconds, they adjusted and matched their rhythm to the new tones. Marcus realized the pattern sovereign was adapting. He needed to change his approach. He shut off the emitter and stepped back, thinking. The goal was not to overpower. The signal completely, that could take too much time, but to create enough disruption to pull the enforcers away from the door. He contacted Juno through his earpiece and explained what had happened. Juno's reply was quick. "Patterns adapt. You need a moving disruption source, something they will follow. If you can get them away from the house, the AI can block the signal inside until reinforcements arrive." Marcus checked the small sound emitters in his pack. He had 6, each no larger than a palm. They could attach to surfaces or vehicles and play a mix of irregular beats and counter-harmonics. He formed a plan. He would place the emitters in a trail leading away from the house toward the open field where his freighter was hidden. Once the enforcers followed the sound, he could seal the house and give the AI full control of the interior signal environment. Before moving, he looked once more at his mother. She watched him silently, her eyes calm but tired. He promised her he would be back in a few minutes. She nodded again as if she understood. Marcus slipped out through the back door and moved quietly around the side of the house. The pounding was still steady on the other side of the wall. He placed the first emitter near the front corner of the yard, then activated it. The irregular beats began at low volume, slowly increasing. Within seconds, 2 of the enforcers turned, their heads slightly toward the sound. Then, as if connected by a single thought, the entire group shifted in unison and began walking toward it. The pounding stopped. Marcus placed the second emitter farther along the path toward the field. The enforcers followed without speaking, their steps perfectly matched. The plan was working, but he knew it would not last forever. The pattern sovereign would realize the bait soon enough. He moved quickly, placing each emitter and activating it before moving to the next location. By the time he reached the edge of the field, all 17 enforcers were following the trail. They entered the open space, still moving with the same mechanical precision. Marcus stepped behind a thick tree trunk and watched. The emitters created a web of irregular sounds across the field, holding their attention for now. He tapped his earpiece and told the AI to seal the house and block all external signals. The AI confirmed. Signal shield active. Interior environment secured. Marcus knew he had bought some time, but this was only the first step. The pattern sovereign would not let go of its hold so easily, and somewhere beyond the calm afternoon sky, it was already adjusting its plan. The field was quiet, except for the faint, irregular tones from the emitters. The HOA enforcers stood in the open grass, facing the sound sources without moving. Their bodies were still, their eyes fixed straight ahead. Marcus kept low behind the tree line, watching for any sign that they might break away. Juno's voice came through his earpiece. "You have about 30 minutes before the pattern recalibrates. Use the time to find the source. It will be nearby. Look for anything that does not belong." Marcus understood. The pattern sovereign did not rely only on the human hosts. It needed a physical transmitter to boost its signal across a neighborhood. If he could find it, he might weaken the entire influence. He moved quietly along the edge of the field, making his way toward the main street that curved deeper into the neighborhood. The houses here looked normal from a distance, but as he drew closer, he noticed small details that felt wrong. Lawns were trimmed exactly the same length. Mailboxes stood at identical heights. Curtains in the windows were closed in the same perfect angle. Marcus had lived here long enough in the past to know it was never this exact. This was the work of the pattern. Halfway down the street, he saw it. Between two houses stood a black structure about twice his height. It looked like a narrow tower made of smooth glass, but it reflected no light. The surface seemed to absorb sunlight instead of bouncing it away. A faint hum vibrated from its base, low enough to feel more than hear. Marcus scanned it with his wrist device. The readout showed unusual energy signatures, layered with repeating wave patterns. It was clearly not human technology. The patterns matched those found in the harmonics from the HOA enforcers' voices. This was the transmitter, Juno's. Voice came again. "You found it! Good! But be careful. These towers have self-defense systems. Do not touch it directly. We will send you a disruption code, but you will have to apply it through a direct signal link." Marcus moved closer, staying behind the shade of a nearby fence. From here he could see that the tower was anchored into the ground with 4 thin rods that sank deep into the soil. The hum grew stronger the nearer he got. It was not loud, but it seemed to press into his thoughts, urging him to stop moving. He shook his head to clear it and pulled a small signal injector from his belt pouch. The device was designed to override enemy transmitters during the war. It could send a burst of counter patterns strong enough to scramble most control systems. The problem was reaching the tower without alerting the HOA enforcers or any automated defenses. He scanned again and found faint heat traces moving along the base of the tower. Small drones no bigger than a hand, circling it like silent guards. Juno sent the disruption code through the secure channel. Marcus loaded it into the signal injector. The code was complex, made of fast-changing tones and pulses that no living brain could follow. It would not just disrupt the tower, it would force it to reboot into a passive state for several hours. Marcus waited until the drones moved to the far side of the tower, then stepped forward quickly. He pressed the injector against a small port at the tower's base. The device lit up as the code began to transfer. The hum from the tower grew louder for a moment, then shifted into an uneven pulse, like static breaking through a radio. The drones turned and moved toward him. Marcus yanked the injector free and stepped back. The tower's surface flickered, its deep black fading into a dull gray. The hum dropped until it was barely audible. Juno's voice came through, urgent but calm. "The signal is weakening across the neighborhood. The enforcers will start losing synchronization. You need to return to your mother before they regain control." Marcus moved quickly back toward the field. When he arrived, the HOA enforcers were still standing in formation, but their movements were no longer perfectly timed. A few of them shifted their weight or blinked at different moments. Their faces looked confused, as if they had just woken from a long dream. One of them turned and looked toward Marcus. His eyes were no longer fixed and empty. Instead, they were wide with uncertainty. Marcus stepped forward and told him to remain calm, speaking in a steady voice. The man frowned slightly but nodded. Marcus realized the tower's disruption had freed at least some of them from the direct control. The full influence might take longer to fade, but it was a start. He led the group slowly toward the main street, keeping his voice calm and giving simple instructions. Most followed without resistance. A few still looked uncertain, glancing around, as if expecting to hear the pounding rhythm again. As they walked, Marcus saw other signs of the signal's weakening. Curtains in several houses moved as residents peeked out. A dog barked somewhere down the street, breaking the strange silence that had covered the area earlier. When they reached his mother's house, the AI confirmed that her condition had improved slightly. Her breathing was steadier, and her heart rate had lowered. The interior signal shield was still active, keeping any remaining harmonic influence outside. Marcus stayed with her for a few minutes, making sure she was comfortable. He explained in simple terms that the people outside had been under some kind of influence and that he had stopped the source for now. She listened quietly, then told him she trusted him to handle the rest. Juno contacted him again. "Good work. But I am detecting other towers in nearby neighborhoods. This was only one part of the network. The pattern sovereign does not operate from a single point. It spreads its influence in layers, each one feeding the next." Marcus knew what that meant. If more towers were active, the pattern could return at any moment. The HOA's strange behavior might just be the beginning of a larger plan. He checked his gear, making sure the remaining signal injectors were ready. His freighter was still hidden in the field, but it might not stay undetected if the Sovereign realized it had lost part of its network. Before leaving, Marcus told the AI to keep the signal shield up and monitor all incoming patterns. If any harmonic signal returned, it was to alert him immediately. The AI confirmed and promised to protect Eleanor as best it could. As Marcus stepped back outside, he looked toward the horizon. In the distance, he could see faint glints of black against the sunlight, other towers standing silently among the houses. The pattern had been broken in one place, but the rest of the network still pulsed with control. He had come home to save his mother, but now he knew the fight was much larger. Marcus stood at the end of the street, watching the faint glints of black glass towers in the distance. They looked harmless from far away, but he knew each one carried the same rhythm-based signal that had trapped the HOA enforcers and put his mother in danger. Breaking one tower had weakened the influence here, but the others were still active, and the pattern sovereign would not remain passive for long. Juno's voice reached him through the earpiece. "Marcus, we are detecting reactivation attempts. The Sovereign is trying to rebuild the signal through the other towers. You have a small window before they regain full strength. You need allies on the ground. Free humans fight harder than any machine." Marcus understood. He could not dismantle the entire network alone. The enforcers who had been freed might help if they could understand what had happened. He turned to the group he had led back from the field. They stood together, on the sidewalk, still looking uncertain but no longer moving in perfect unison. He spoke clearly and simply, avoiding anything that might confuse them. "You were under the control of a signal. It used sound and rhythm to take away your choices. That control is weaker now, but it will return if we do nothing. I need your help to stop it for good." Some of them frowned. Others glanced at each other. One woman in the front stepped forward. "I remember knocking on the door," she said slowly, "but I could not stop myself. My hands kept moving. My voice kept speaking words I did not choose." Her voice shook as she spoke. Marcus nodded. "That is how the signal works. It uses your body against you, but it can be broken. We need to take down the towers before the signal becomes strong again." He explained the location of the nearest two towers. One stood near the neighborhood park, hidden behind a tall hedge. The other was near the community center. Both would have the same black glass structure and possibly the same drone guards. The freed enforcers listened carefully. A few still seemed hesitant, but most were starting to show determination. They wanted to stop whatever had controlled them. Marcus divided them into two teams. One would go with him to the park tower, and the other would move toward the community center tower. He gave each team a small sound emitter programmed with counter patterns and explained how to place it near the base of a tower. Once the drones were distracted, they could attach the signal injector and load the disruption code Juno had provided. Before they moved, Marcus contacted Juno to send an update. Juno's voice was steady but urgent. "We will keep monitoring the signal levels. Once you take down the next 2 towers, the control network in this area should collapse completely. But be aware, the Sovereign may respond more aggressively now that it knows it is being attacked." Marcus led his team toward the park. The streets felt strange, too quiet in some places, yet carrying faint sounds of movement in others. Every so often he saw curtains shift in a window or a figure, standing still on a porch. Those people might still be under the signal's influence. When they reached the park, the tower was easy to spot. It rose just above the hedge, its surface absorbing sunlight in the same unnatural way as the first one. Marcus signaled for his team to move slowly. They could hear the faint hum even before they reached the hedge. He sent 2 people around the side to place the emitter in a spot that would draw the drones away from the main access port. Within seconds of activation, the drones drifted toward the sound, their small bodies moving in smooth arcs. Marcus stepped in quickly, pressed the signal injector to the port, and began the code transfer. The tower's hum grew louder for a moment, then shifted into uneven static. Its surface dulled, and the drones froze in place before dropping gently to the ground. The team exchanged quick glances of relief. Marcus wasted no time. He told them to return to his mother's house while he went to check on the second team. The second tower was harder to approach. The community center had several people standing outside, their eyes distant and their bodies unmoving. Marcus knew they were still under the signal. Moving through them would risk drawing attention, but he had no choice. He slipped through quietly, the freed enforcers following close behind. The tower stood behind the building, guarded by more drones. The second team had already set their emitter, and the drones were moving toward it. One of the freed enforcers was kneeling at the base of the tower, attaching the signal injector. Marcus covered the area, keeping watch for any sign of interference. A few of the still-influenced residents turned their heads toward the sound of the emitter but did not approach. When the code finished transferring, the tower shifted to the same dull gray as the others. Juno's voice came through almost instantly. "Signal strength has dropped by more than half. The network in your area is collapsing. People will start regaining full awareness within minutes. But Marcus, the Sovereign will not abandon this sector quietly. It may try to send reinforcement from other controlled zones." Marcus looked around. The residents outside the community center were already blinking and shifting, their expressions showing confusion. A man stepped forward and asked where he was. A woman held her head as if trying to clear a fog. The freed enforcers helped guide them away from the area, speaking calmly and keeping their movements slow. Marcus could see relief on some faces, though others were still too dazed to react. Back at his mother's house, the AI reported that the neighborhood was returning to normal patterns. People were stepping outside, speaking to one another in uncertain voices. Dogs barked, birds called, and the stillness was breaking. Marcus gathered both teams in front of the house. "We stopped the towers here," he said, "but the Sovereign's network reaches far beyond this neighborhood. If we do nothing, it will spread again. We need to share what happened and prepare others to resist the signal." The people listened closely. Some volunteered to help in other neighborhoods. Others offered to stay and guard the area in case any signal returned. Juno's final message of the day came through the earpiece. "You bought this place time, Marcus, and you proved something important. The Sovereign's control is not unbreakable. Humans can resist if they stand together. That will matter when the fight grows larger." Marcus looked at the people around him, neighbors, former enforcers, and strangers who had been freed only minutes ago. They were tired, but they were alert, and their eyes showed determination. The pattern had been broken here, but Marcus knew this was only the beginning. The sovereign would adapt, and when it did, humanity would need to be ready. He planned to make sure they would be. The sun rose over the neighborhood, casting a warm light on streets that had been silent for too long. Now they were alive again. Children stood in front yards, speaking to each other in cautious voices. Adults gathered in small groups trying to understand what had happened to them. Some remembered nothing at all. Others recalled flashes, standing still, hearing strange sounds, or moving against their will. Marcus walked among them, making sure his mother was safe inside the house. She sat by the window, her eyes brighter than they had been in days. The AI assistant kept her company, offering calm updates about the outside situation. She smiled faintly when Marcus waved before heading back into the street. The people looked to him for answers. He had been the one who dismantled the black glass towers. He had freed them from the strange rhythm that had controlled their bodies. Now they wanted to know what came next. Marcus spoke to them clearly. "The signal is gone from here, but it is not gone everywhere. Other neighborhoods, other cities, maybe whole regions are still under the same control. The source is the pattern sovereign, and it will try to rebuild what we broke. We have to stop it before it reaches us again." A man in the crowd raised his hand. "What can we do? We are just residents. We do not have special tools or training like you." Marcus shook his head. "You have something more important. You know what it feels like to be under its control, and you know what it means to be free. That makes you strong. You can help others break free." Juno's voice came through Marcus's earpiece at that moment. "Marcus, I have mapped the remaining towers within a 20-mile radius. If you move fast, you can dismantle several before the Sovereign sends reinforcements. I suggest forming multiple teams to strike at once." Marcus relayed the message. The people listened carefully, nodding as they began to understand the plan. They would not wait for help from distant authorities or hope that someone else would solve the problem. They would act now. They divided into groups. Some stayed behind, to guard the neighborhood and protect those who were still weak or confused. Others volunteered to move with Marcus to take down the nearest towers. He gave each group a sound emitter and a small disruption device, explaining exactly how to use them. The first target was a tower hidden in a wooded area near the edge of town. Marcus's group moved quickly, keeping to side streets and avoiding open spaces where drones might patrol. Along the way, they saw signs of the Sovereign's influence: houses with closed curtains, cars parked neatly in identical positions, and people standing motionless at street corners. They kept their distance, careful not to draw attention. When they reached the woods, the tower was easy to find. It rose above the trees, its surface black and featureless. Marcus directed 2 people to place the sound emitter on the far side while the others circled around. As soon as the drones moved toward the emitter, Marcus stepped in with the disruption device. The signal broke within minutes, and the tower's dark surface faded to gray. The group moved on to the next target, a tower in an industrial lot behind a row of warehouses. This one was more heavily guarded. 6 drones hovered in a tight formation around it. The team waited until the sound emitter was in place, then rushed forward together. Marcus attached the disruption device while others shielded him from the drones. The tower fell silent, and the drones dropped to the ground. Back in the neighborhood, the second team had also succeeded. They returned with several freed residents who had been under the signal. These people were shaken but grateful, and they immediately began helping to strengthen the local defense. By midday, they had taken down 5 towers. The signal in the surrounding area weakened to almost nothing. Juno reported that the Sovereign's influence here was collapsing. "You are pushing it out faster than it expected," Juno said. "It will try to respond, but for now, you have the advantage." The people gathered in the central park, the same place where one of the first towers had fallen. They brought supplies, water, food, and tools, and set up a base of operations. From there, they could send teams in every direction to help other neighborhoods. Marcus stood before them, feeling the weight of what they had done. Just hours ago, these people had been under control. Now they were working together, free and determined. "We broke the pattern here," he told them, "and we can do it elsewhere." The sovereign thought humans would obey without question. It was wrong. "We will not give it back what we took away." The crowd responded with quiet determination. There was no cheering or shouting, only steady nods and a sense of shared purpose. That night, they set up patrols to watch for drones or any sign of the signal returning. They kept communication lines open with Juno, who monitored the wider region from orbit. Reports came in from other communities. Some were beginning to resist, on their own, inspired by the news that one neighborhood had broken free. As Marcus walked through the park under the dim streetlights, he passed people repairing fences, checking equipment, or speaking quietly about their plans. He knew the sovereign would adapt. It would find new ways to try to control them. But, for now, they had shown that it could be defeated, and that was the first step toward lasting freedom. In the early hours before dawn, Juno sent a final message. "Marcus, sensors detect large-scale movement from the east. The sovereign is sending a concentrated force toward your sector. You have maybe a day before it arrives. If you are going to expand your liberated zone, now is the time." Marcus looked toward the horizon, where the faint glow of the city could be seen. He thought of the towers still standing there, still sending their rhythm into the minds of anyone nearby. He turned back to the park, where the people of his neighborhood waited. Tomorrow they would not just defend, they would advance. The revolt had begun. The morning air was cool, but the tension in the park made it feel heavy. People moved with purpose, packing supplies into carts and checking the disruption devices Marcus had given them. The quiet hum of conversation filled the space. Everyone knew what was coming. The pattern sovereign would not leave them alone. It would try one last time to reclaim the control it had lost. Marcus stood with Juno's voice in his ear, studying the map she had sent down from orbit. Red marks showed the locations of the remaining towers in the nearby city. A large cluster was concentrated in the eastern sector, and that was where the incoming force was headed. "They will reinforce that cluster," Juno said. "If they succeed, the signal could spread again. You must stop them before they arrive." Marcus looked around at the people waiting for his word. They were not soldiers. They were teachers, shopkeepers, mechanics, and parents. But in the last 2 days, they had done what no trained force had managed. They had faced the sovereign's control and broken free. That was something no weapon could replace. "We will not wait for them to come here," Marcus said. "We will take the fight to them. If we destroy the towers in the eastern sector, the sovereign will lose its base in this region. That will give other communities a chance to rise up." The plan was simple but risky. 3 teams would move toward the city by different routes. They would strike the towers at the same time, cutting off the signal before the reinforcements could arrive. Juno would coordinate the timing from above and warn them of any approaching drones. Marcus's team moved along a disused railway line that cut through the countryside. The tracks were rusted, and weeds grew between the rails, but it offered a direct path into the city without passing through controlled neighborhoods. Along the way, they passed small farms where people watched them from doorways. Marcus waved and called out that they were breaking the towers. Some of the farmers nodded and gave them food or water before sending them on their way. As they neared the city, the signs of the sovereign's control became clearer. Streets were empty except for the occasional drone that hovered above. Windows were closed, and lights flickered in strange, steady rhythms. Marcus told his team to move quietly and stay out of sight. The first target came into view, a black glass tower standing in the middle of an open plaza. Drones patrolled in a slow circle around it. Marcus signaled for the sound emitter to be placed at the far end of the plaza. The moment it activated, the drones turned and moved toward the noise. The team rushed forward. Marcus attached the disruption device to the base of the tower, and within seconds, the surface lost its sheen. The humming stopped. The signal in. This part of the city was gone. Through his earpiece, Marcus heard Juno. "First target down. Other teams are in position. Proceed to the next." The second tower was harder to reach. It was in the courtyard of a tall office building, and several people stood near it, their eyes distant and unfocused. Marcus knew they were still under the signal. The team moved carefully, avoiding contact. Again, the sound emitter drew the drones away. The disruption device worked quickly, and soon the second tower was silent. The people nearby blinked and looked around as if waking from a long dream. Juno's voice came again, this time urgent. "Marcus, the Sovereign's reinforcements are entering the city from the east. You have less than 20 minutes before they reach the last tower cluster." They ran. The final target for Marcus's team was the largest tower they had seen yet. It stood in the center of a wide roundabout, with drones circling high above. This time, the sound emitter only pulled a few of them away. The rest hovered in place, scanning for intruders. Marcus and his team split up. 2 members distracted the drones from one side, while Marcus and another teammate crawled along the edge of the roundabout. The moment the drones turned toward the distraction, Marcus leapt forward and attached the disruption device. The tower's hum faltered, then stopped. The surface dulled to gray. Almost at the same time, reports came in from the other teams. Their towers were down. The eastern sector was free, but Juno's voice cut through the moment of victory. "The reinforcements are here. A large cluster of drones is moving toward your position. They will try to restart the towers." Marcus looked around. People were emerging from buildings, their control broken. Some looked frightened, but others picked up whatever they could, tools, poles, even buckets, and moved to block the streets. The residents had no intention of letting the Sovereign's machines pass. When the drones arrived, the streets were already filled with people. Marcus's team used the disruption devices on the lead drones while the residents struck at their sensors. The machines, unable to process the sudden chaos, pulled back. Without the towers to feed them signals, their coordination broke down. One by one, they fell from the sky. The battle lasted less than an hour. When it ended, the towers were still silent, and the drones lay scattered across the streets. The people cheered, not loud but steady, the sound of relief and determination. From orbit, Juno's voice carried a hint of pride. "Marcus, the Sovereign is retreating from this region. Its influence here is gone. You have given others the proof they needed that it can be beaten." Marcus looked at the crowd. They were tired, but their eyes were bright. "This was not just my work," he said. "We did this together. We showed that control can be broken, and freedom can be taken back." Back in the neighborhood, Eleanor sat on the porch as her son returned. She rose slowly and hugged him, holding on for a moment before letting go. The air felt lighter, the streets busier. Children played again, and people spoke without fear. That night, as stars filled the sky, Marcus knew the fight was not over. The Sovereign was still out there somewhere in the galaxy, searching for another place to impose its pattern. But now, it would remember this region. It would remember that here, humans had refused to obey, and far beyond Earth, in the quiet spaces between the stars, whispers of the story began to spread. Other worlds would hear of the day a group of ordinary humans stood against the pattern Sovereign and won. Humanity had proved itself.